As we crested over the ridge to run into the airfield, there was a complete blanket of exploding AAA shells at a couple of 100 feet, and a lot of visually laid AAA actually firing at us on the run-in.
You hear there, Commander speaking.
The commander pipes that the Argentinian cruiser, General Belgrano, has been torpedoed.
The Belgrano, the Argentinian cruiser, has been torpedoed to the south of the Falkland Islands by one of our SSNs.
There were no cheers. Seamen do not celebrate such news. HMS Sheffield, one of our pickets on the edge of the battle group, has taken a direct missile hit.
HMS Sheffield smoking in the distance. HMS Sheffield, that is.
Men are horribly burnt. We live half our lives now in these asbestos anti-burn masks, but after Sheffield's casualties, we don't complain. We have completed our first week of war, and we are about to begin our 6th week at sea. May the 1st, Saturday, this war at sea began for us at dawn on May Day. The ships of the task force had already crossed the perimeter of the total exclusion zone, that cordon sanitaire that both sides claim as their own. Our carriers, Hermes and Invincible, are at the center of the battle group, surrounded by their escorts of destroyers and frigates and the Royal Fleet Auxiliaries, supply ships and tankers. By first light, May Day morning, we had already drawn first blood. Even as our Sea Harriers were being loaded with bombs for their first war sortie, we were told an RAF Vulcan bomber had flown the 8 hours from Ascension Island over 3,000 miles away and had bombed the airstrip close to Port Stanley. Below the flight deck, the Sea Harrier pilots from 800 Squadron, with a sprinkling from the Royal Air Force, were being given their individual combat tasks. 9 aircraft to Stanley, 3 to the airstrip at Darwin, 60 miles east. Their orders: to inflict maximum damage to military installations, radar, fuel dumps, vehicles, personnel, and, in the words of their operations officer, other soft-skinned targets. One by one, they waited in turn for the launch spot. Carefully, their ground crews, called grubbers, tucked them in, tightening this strap, easing that, a last-minute check on the ejection seat, another reminder of some irritating minor technical fault. 10 minutes to midday British time, but only just dawn here, and they took off. A familiar sound and a familiar sight this past month in make-believe operational training exercises, but this was for real. Now they faced war in the air. 12 aircraft, 3 bombs apiece, 36,000 pounds of high explosive for 2 tiny Falkland airstrips. It was 25 minutes flying there, 25 back. And for the first time since we'd left Portsmouth, our flight deck was silent and empty. Our destroyer escort, HMS Broadsword, weaved about us. It's our goalkeeper, our protection, armed with Seawolf, the most advanced sea-to-air missile system in the world. Men and boys, some only 16 and 17 years old, scanned the sea and the sky from their ice-cold lookout turrets. The Royal Marines had set up makeshift machine gun positions, port and starboard, for anti-aircraft fire. We all pray never to hear them used. Then there was suddenly a cheer, a formation overhead, a victory roll, a count of the shapes in the sky, and all our aircraft had returned. The grins on the faces inside the cockpits and the thumbs up after the canopies had slid open confirmed their success. One Harrier had been slightly damaged, hit in the tail by a 20mm anti-aircraft shell. But within hours, it was repaired and the aircraft was back flying again.
As we crested over the ridge to run into the airfield, there was a complete blanket of exploding AAA shells at a couple of 100 feet, and a lot of visually laid AAA actually firing at us on the run-in.
How did you feel going into that? Did it give you pause for thought, or were you not able to think when you're moving fast?
Well, for about 2 seconds it scared me fartless, and then after that you just had to concentrate on the job in hand. Because we all knew what we had to do, we knew which routes we were taking, and it was just a question of getting as low as you could, weaving around what flank you could, and putting your weapons on the target.
What were you putting down and where?
I took 3 CBUs, and my brief was to run in from the northern end of the airfield, across the runway, and spread them across the runway into the domestic side, into the aircraft pound.
And could you get any idea how well you'd succeeded?
Yes, I think my first bomb probably took out an aircraft which is on the northern side of the airfield, a little light aircraft, and then the remaining 2 rolled across the airfield into the pan, which was actually full of smoke and flames already at this stage.
What did it look like?
The airfield itself was just the airport buildings were just a very large area of fire and smoke and dust. You couldn't actually pick out very little detail in there because there's so much.
Could you see people on the ground?
No, you couldn't see any people. I think they were pretty well down foxholes, but you could see a lot of guns firing.
The reconnaissance photographs showed that Stanley Airport had been damaged, but not as severely as we'd first thought. Only one of the Vulcan bombs had hit the strip, and the mounds of earth showed where the Harrier bombs had landed. Further attacks would obviously be necessary. Later, it was confirmed that while our frigates had been bombarding Argentinian positions close to the airport, they'd been attacked by Argentinian fighter bombers. In the dogfight, pilots from Hermes and Invincible had shot down 3 Mirage fighters and a Canberra bomber. They said that one Mirage had been shot down by the Argentinians' own shore batteries. 9 o'clock, May Day evening, and the commander pipes that the Argentinian cruiser, General Belgrano, has been torpedoed.
The Belgrano, the Argentinian cruiser, has been torpedoed to the south of the Falklands Islands by one of our SSNs.
There were no cheers. Most men received the news of the sinking silently. Seamen do not celebrate such news. May the 4th, Tuesday. Sudden change in the weather. The sea is calm, visibility to the horizon. Action stations at 10 minutes past 1. There's a red alert. At 20 minutes past 2, we can just make out smoke 10, possibly 15 miles away. HMS Sheffield, one of our pickets on the edge of the battle group, has taken a direct missile hit. She is on fire. Helicopters with medical teams and extra firefighting equipment are sent to the blazing ship, but as each one returns, the pilots confirm that the fire is winning. The order is to abandon ship. Smoke pouring from the hole in the starboard side, just above water level. Casualties are medevaced back aboard Hermes and other ships around us. They tell us the exocet missile hit amidships, blasting upwards into the operations room and forwards into the galley. The missile's unspent rocket fuel turned the center of the ship into a fireball. Men are horribly burnt, made worse by the nylon and polyester overalls and trousers they were wearing. They say the ship was filled with smoke in 20 seconds. They couldn't see or breathe the smoke. And without electrical power, the fire hoses didn't work. Survivors dozed where they could find space, crouched where they could in the darkness below deck. Many were shocked and disbelieving. They said we had no warning. Others saw the missile coming, but they had no time even to shout the alarm. The ship, they said, seemed to explode, and there was suddenly fire everywhere.
I can tell you that we're talking about seconds to react rather than minutes. And I'm sure you will appreciate that a missile which comes in less than 12 feet off the deck at very high speed, many hundreds of miles an hour, gives us a very short time of response. And we saw it at a stage at which there was really no time to do anything other than for those who were in the immediate vicinity of the small number of people who saw this missile appearing, only had time to say take cover. And we're talking about 3 or 4 seconds later, the missile striking HMS Sheffield.
How much effect did it have?
Devastating. It hit the center of the ship, which is the center of all operation, both mechanical and detection and weapon system wise, about 6 feet above the water level, damaged 2 large compartments, and when inside the ship, exploded, and exploded outwards and upwards. And we're actually talking about 15 to 20 seconds, I know it sounds incredible, but 15 to 20 seconds before the whole of the working area of the ship, and I'm talking about 1/3 of the ship, the center portion, was filled by black, acrid, pungent smoke.
Could you describe, in your own words, what happened the moment after, how the men reacted, how you reacted, what
The men were quite incredible. I think we were extremely fortunate that Sheffield has been at sea since, away from the UK, since the 17th of November, which may sound a long time. We were actually due to go back at the beginning of April, but we were diverted for this emergency. And there are some positive sides to that, really, that the ship's company get to know each other. We knock off all our round corners, square corners. Morale was really at an incredibly high level, and teamwork was really excellent. My overriding impression throughout the 5 hours that we tried to fight this damage.
5 hours?
5 hours, through which we tried to fight this damage, was of immense calm, common sense, and careful thinking by really every member of the ship's company.
How were you able to go about fighting the damage? You had your power knocked out, you had your command signalling system knocked out. How were you able to do that?
We weren't. Initially, our biggest problem was the smoke, the type of smoke which you cannot possibly breathe in, and the fact that our firefighting water system was completely cut off. We had no fire pressure, no fire main pressure with which to fight the fire, and we could not get below decks anywhere near the scene of damage, which was fairly extensive within 2 minutes of hitting.
And you knew there were men down there?
Yes, but we didn't know how many. And this, I think, is where we were fortunate in having been together as a team for so long. And I have no doubt that the ship's company really saved themselves largely by their own sensible efforts. They were quite remarkable.
What was it that finally made you decide to give up that fight, to abandon the ship?
I think we started thinking that we were on a losing wicket when we realized the fire was spreading. The decks were hot on the upper deck. You could feel the heat of the deck through your feet with shoes on. The superstructure was steaming. Paint on the ship's side was coming off. The area around the initial area where the missile penetrated the hull was glowing red. It was white hot and red hot. The flames we could see coming out of the hole. The extent of damage was such that we knew that there is no way in that class of submarine, that class of ship, that you can possibly fight that ship again with that amount of damage.
It would have been useless if you'd saved it.
Even if we saved it and went back on board, there is no way that that ship could positively contribute to this group.
You went back later by helicopter to see it. Even then, you were certain you'd made the right decision to abandon.
I have no doubt at all, I'm afraid. We went back by helicopter about 7 hours after the explosion, and the whole of the center section was a roaring mass of flame. That is the whole of the working area of the ship.
It was your decision to abandon the ship?
Yes, it was.
How did you feel when you gave that order?
Awful.
You'd known the ship some time.
Yes. Not as long as the rest of the ship's company, because I only joined it abroad in January. But the rest of that ship's company had been together for a long time. It's a very good ship. I'm sure every captain would say that their ship's company is the best afloat. But I certainly believe that mine was.
Captain,
I'd just like to finish, if I could, and say that the other part of the decision to abandon was the fact that we were taking part, or taking the attention of other ships and units in the area at a time when we were subject to attack. We had no hope of retrieving the fighting capability of that ship. The fire had extended to an extent that was dangerous with regard to our own ammunition magazines and missile magazines. And the ship's company, all of them, were on the upper deck and had been on the upper deck in very cold conditions for 5 hours. We were not winning that fire, beating it. We were losing.
late afternoon Tuesday, and a second blow to the task force. In a further attack on Stanley Airfield, a Harrier from Hermes has been hit by ack-ack fire. Flight Lieutenant Nick Taylor is missing, presumed dead. Pilots later confirmed that his plane exploded on the bombing run-in. The 7th of May, Friday, action stations again. We live half our lives now in these asbestos anti-flash, anti-burn masks, but after Sheffield's casualties, we don't complain. The weather has turned around again. We are in fog. The Met Officer says the Falklands has 5 days of fog a year, and this is the 6th. Visibility is less than 400 yards. Our Harriers cannot fly. Air activity has been reported over the Falklands, but if our aircraft take off in this weather, they'll probably not get back. Our standby Harriers wait on the flight deck, their engines running. The pilots praying they'll not be given the order to fly. We are on red alert again. Argentinian aircraft are approaching us 60 miles away, just beyond our envelope of fog. They are thought to be carrying the exocet missile. An hour later, we are told that 2 Sea Harriers from HMS Invincible collided in the fog after takeoff. Both pilots are missing, presumed dead. The 8th of May, Saturday, the fog has lifted, and we are allowed to overfly Sheffield. It's 4 days now since she was abandoned, but she refuses to sink despite the gaping hole in her side. Somewhere below, she's still burning. Smoke curls out of one of the hatches, distorted by the heat. Afloat and drifting with the currents, silent and gutted, a tomb for those who died inside. We have completed our first week of war, and we are about to begin our 6th week at sea. And we seem constantly now in bad weather as we approach the Antarctic winter. The men of the task force have been told to prepare themselves for a long, cold winter of attrition. Michael Nicholson, ITN, with the British Task Force off the Falkland Islands.